Well, good morning. Welcome to Northwest Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Diana Kohler. I'm the worship associate for this morning's service, and today we will honor the end of Joshua Berg's ministerial internship with us. You'll hear from two more members of the internship committee who are participating in the service this morning, Amanda Spurrell and Vanessa Washington. And I also want to acknowledge Rick Goldberg, Neil Whitbeck, and Christine Reyes for their service on that committee. Also participating this morning are Ken Hermanot and Alex Myers, who have created the music for today and are working with Ben Gable on the technical aspects of the service. And now, Alex. Thank you, Alex. As we enter into this time of worship together, sacred because we name it so, we Unitarian Universalists know that there is no separation between the sacred and the mundane. Rather, it is one entwined gift from the universe. If only we take a breath and notice the gift that is the spirit of life. Let us now enter into a time of worship together.
Opening words are "Even in the Most Broken Places, There is Room for Love" by Becky Brooks. Mother's Day is complicated. Joyful for many, yes, but complicated. It's right there on the calendar, even if your mother has died. Even if you've been told yet again that you're still not pregnant. or if you've never been more scared than right now because you are pregnant, it's Mother's Day. Even if your own mother's priorities included everything but you, there's going to be a Mother's Day Google Doodle with flowers and pink stuff. Even if you have scars, ones you can see or ones you can't, it's Mother's Day. That cake mix commercial is going to roll out 4 times an hour, even when you can't stop shaking and crying because you can't believe you slapped your little boy today. It's Mother's Day. And we all have to live with that in those silent, breathless moments because even when the baby dies, it's Mother's Day. And so let's go to church. Let's be a church where we can acknowledge how difficult it is to have this day, right alongside how joyful this day can be. Let's be a church where we don't pretend there aren't inky depths of space between us, even when we sing. Let's be a church that fills the space between our differences with love, because even in the most broken places, there's room for love. We can be that church.
Our first hymn this morning is hymn number 93, To Mercy, Pity, Peace, and Love.
To mercy, pity, peace, and love all pray in their distress, and to those virtues of delight return their thankfulness, return their thankfulness. For mercy has a human heart, and pity a human face, and love the human form divine, and peace the human dress, and peace the human dress. Then every one of every clime that prays in deep distress, praise to the human form divine of mercy, pity, peace, of mercy, pity, peace.
Good morning. There was once a very curious child named Maria Mitchell. Now, Maria was full of questions. When she was 2, she asked a lot of what? What is this? What is that? What are those? What's that there? And her parents answered as best they could. That is a dog. This is a cat. These are the cat's whiskers. Those are its toes. Her parents gave her a lot of answers, but Maria always had more questions. And when she was 3, she started asking how. How does this happen? How does this work? How do we know what's going to happen? And her parents said, well, we look at it, we wonder, we do experiments. And then Maria turned 4 and she started asking why. Why do boats float? Why does it get dark at night? Why do cats have fur? Why do people wear clothes? Her parents kept trying to answer as best they could, but no matter how many answers they had, Maria had more questions. She asked questions at home and at school. She asked questions at the Quaker church where her family attended. She asked questions of everyone she met, hundreds of questions, thousands of questions, an infinity of questions. Maria had an infinity of questions, and she had a love for the infinity of the stars. In the evening, she and her father would climb the stairs to the roof of their house in Nantucket, Massachusetts, right by the sea. And they would stretch out on the roof and watch the stars above them. There were millions of stars, an infinity of stars, and one little girl. I love the stars, she told her father. And they would look through the telescope to see further into the sky. And then Maria would ask questions. Where do stars come from? How old are they? Why do they shine? How many are there? How far away are they? Some questions her father could answer, and some he could not. So Maria set out to find answers to her questions for herself. She studied hard, she read a lot of books and did experiments, and she became an astronomer, a person who studies the stars. And when she was 29 years old, she discovered a comet, which was named the Mitchell Comet, after her, Maria Mitchell. But Maria was still full of questions. Now she wondered about God. How do we know God really exists? Is all of the Bible true? Why are we here? Some people gave her answers, but when Maria asked, "How do you know?" they always said, "I just do," or "I read it in a book," or "You shouldn't ask so many questions, Maria." And Maria did not think those answers were good enough. But the answers to her questions weren't meant to be found in books or by doing experiments. She had to just keep asking. One day, she heard a talk by a Unitarian minister named William Ellery Channing. He didn't have the answers either, but he said there was an infinity of answers to the infinity of questions, and that the most important thing was to wonder, not to know. Maria decided to join the Unitarian Church because those words woke up her mind. All through life, Maria Mitchell asked what, how, why, where. She became a teacher so she could help others answer their own questions. She was a professor of astronomy and taught people about the stars. Sometimes they found the answers and sometimes they didn't, but Maria was happy either way because now she knew the most important thing was to wonder, to be curious, not necessarily to know. Maria's curiosity as a child drew her toward her passion and her work as an astronomer. Her curiosity as an adult led her on a search for truth and meaning that led her to the Unitarian religion. Curiosity brought Maria to many experiences in life. I wonder how curiosity draws you towards something. I wonder how curiosity can draw us toward one another. I wonder if it really is more important to be curious or to know. Please join me in listening to hymn 124, Be That Guide.
Be that guide whom love sustains, rise above the daily strife. Lift on high the good you find, help to heal the hurts of life. Be that ever nothing daunts, doubt a friend or taunt a foe. Ever strive for liberty, show the path that life should go. Be that ever trusting good, bitter though the test may be. Through all ages they are right, though they build in agony. Be that teacher faith directs, move beyond the old frontier. Though the frightened fear that face, be tomorrow's pioneer.
This is titled Map of the Journey in Progress by Reverend Victoria E. Stafford. Here is where I found my voice and chose to be brave. Here is a place where I forgave someone against my better judgment, and I survived that. And unexpectedly, amazingly, I became wiser. Here's where I once forgiven, was ready for once in my life to receive forgiveness and to be transformed. And I survived that also. I lived to tell the tale. This is the place where I said no, more loudly than I thought I ever could. And everybody stared. But I said no loudly anyway, because I knew it must be said. And those staring settled down into harmless, ineffective grumbling, and over me, they had no power anymore. Here's a time, and here's another, when I laid down my fear and walked right on into it, right up to my neck into that rolling water. Here's where cruelty taught me something, and here's where I was first astonished by gratuitous compassion and knew it was for the miracle it was, the requirement it is. It was a trembling time. And here, much later, is where I returned the blessing. Clumsily, it wasn't hard, but I was unaccustomed. It circled round, and as best I could, I sent it back out, passed the gift along. This circular motion around and around has no apparent end. Here's a place, a murky puddle, where I have stumbled more than once and fallen. I don't know yet what to learn here. On this site, I was outraged, and the rage sustains me still. It clarifies my seeing. And here's where something caught me: a warm breeze in late winter, birdsong in late summer. Here's where I was told that something was wrong with my eyes, that I see the world strangely. And here's where I said, yes, I know I walk in beauty. Here is where I began to look with my own eyes and listen with my own ears and sing my own song, shaky as it is. Here is where, if by surgeon's knife, my heart is opened up. And here, and here, and here. These are the landmarks of conversion.
Thank you all. A few weeks ago, Kathy Henry emailed me with a suggestion. She said, why don't we have something similar to a coming of age practice for adults, like a celebration of an individual's unique faith journey? And I thought this was an amazing idea. And I committed to thinking about my own spiritual journey. And since this month's theme is story, I'm going to tell a bit of that story today. Let me start by saying that my personal religious convictions, as well as conclusions I've reached, I know are difficult for some who identify more religiously than I do. I've been called out for claiming ministerial authority as I engage with this struggle, and I validate that. Today, I request your grace as I move through this story. I wrote the following paragraph a while ago in an essay entitled, An Atheist, a Humanist, and a Jew Walk into a UU Church. This is what I wrote. According to my late Uncle Sal, I should have studied Hebrew instead of Japanese because I'm Jewish. According to Orthodox members of my family, I am a fallen Jew. According to my mother, I'm her Jewish atheist humanist son. She hasn't added Unitarian Universalist as of the writing of this essay because it's relatively new to the mix and to her. Either that or she has finally reached her hyphenation limit, and I don't blame her. If you ask me, I'd say I'm a culturally Jewish, humanist, Unitarian Universalist in process. Thankfully, I haven't been asked in a while, not because I'm ashamed, but because that is a mouthful. One day, probably in my early 20s, likely one of the many attempts to distract myself from thinking about romantic failures or my lack of career focus, I began thinking about my Jewish upbringing. And one of the first things that struck me was a sentence I heard quite often growing up, which was, "This is what we believe." Right then, I finally decided to consider what I actually believed, or as it turned out, did not believe. I realized then that what I believed was that many stories from the Hebrew Bible and all religions, frankly, there are many that are equally untenable. I realized that I actually rejected dogma, be it Jewish or Christian or anything else, and yes, even humanist dogma. I rejected the dogma. And this process of exploration culminated first in my coming out as an atheist. And I know that causes conflict to hear from a minister, but a minister, in my opinion, also has to be sincere about where they are spiritually. And when I say atheist, I mean atheist is that I don't believe in a creator or any supernatural intelligence that has control over my life, which is a very common belief in UU spaces. So from there, as my thoughts evolved through the months and years, I decided to also consider what I did believe rather than what I merely rejected. And I found humanism. And unlike atheism, which is just about negative beliefs, humanism quite thoroughly confirmed my positive convictions and was much more life affirming. And as much as I do and did enjoy thinking things through, putting things in my head, I was finding it harder and harder to deny the constant nagging of my heart to feel things through as well. So I became determined then to show the world that people of faith, faith communities, did not have a monopoly on compassion and love. That as a humanist, as an atheist, I too was compassionate and loving. In the somewhat cliched words I used at the time of the American Humanist Association's catchphrase, you can be good with or without God. And at this time, I increased my active involvement in social justice work to show this to everyone and to myself. And I became a humanist celebrant, and I eventually began my training as a humanist chaplain as well, where I finally found a calling, something that I was passionate about. And this journey continued with my entrance into a Unitarian Universalist seminary. As I learned more and more about Unitarian Universalism, I began to realize just how much it lined up with my own intellectual and spiritual orientation. In humanist spaces, strictly humanist spaces, I was somewhat isolated from anyone that wasn't in alignment with humanism. And it was a similar feeling to what I experienced in strictly Jewish spaces. I, isolated from others who weren't in alignment with Judaism. However, as a UU Jewish humanist, not only were all of my identities welcomed, but it was clear to me that the ideal state of a UU community is acceptance. And as Starr put it in her sermon on hospitality a few weeks ago, the ideal state of the UU community is the complete affirmation of all identities and communities. Now, we're still in the process of moving toward this ideal, certainly. We probably always will be. UU, though, is the only religion where, rather than assimilation to our way, deference for and adaptation to any and all ways is the goal and the focus of the spiritual work. Now, at first, this was quite shocking to my system. This is not how the world works, is it? Our society seems to reward selfishness and insularity. Communities, they exist separately, not together. My values are mine and your values are yours. And yes, they may overlap, even entirely, but we belong to different groups. But for the first time, I realized how backward that orientation is. What Unitarian Universalism taught me about humanism, interestingly, was that humans, as humanists say, are not only the source of meaning making, but humankind must also be the object of compassion and affirmation in order to make meaning. Life is only meaningful with kindness, care, sympathy, empathy for, and respect and affirmation of all humans. Now, intellectual search matters, but not at the expense of disparagement of others. If I value intelligence and kindness as a humanist, why would I dismiss the meaning making of a person who I admire for their intelligence and kindness just because they identify as a Christian or Jew or a Muslim or something other than a humanist? Am I not then behaving the same as the fundamentalist who I criticize? I believe I personally believe that the world will never completely convert to any one religion or any one philosophy, including humanism. So to consider that conversion a necessity and live as if that were possible would be as irrational as any similar religious missionary conviction. Now, I am not at all saying that I have to be open to believing in a creator God or that Jesus is divine or that the Red Sea was parted. I don't, and I likely never will believe those things. But I am saying that it is not unreasonable to find meaning and purpose and moral guidance in these stories and others that were, after all, created by other humans as they too searched for meaning. We all pick and choose what works and what doesn't for ourselves. That's how humans process meaning. The author and the cognitive scientist and psychologist Paul Bloom talked about how humans are pre-wired to think as well as to feel. So instead of dismissing religious people as misguided, he investigates why belief is so important, how meaning is made, and what divinity means to everybody. And it is incumbent upon me to do the same. If I claim to respect and work toward the humanist ideal of the greater good of all humanity, I must consider the emotional and psychological realities of being human. I must look closely at the role of human nature and consider with genuine, open minded curiosity, like Star mentioned in her story, why humans hold the beliefs they do. And this is especially important since those who do believe in some religious doctrine or supernaturalism are the majority of the other people on earth. Once again, the majority is by no means always right. That's not what I'm saying. I bring up this fact to convey that spirituality and religion must be meaningful in a significant way to so many. According to Bloom, once again, what a really good contemplative person can do is take religious texts and use them to construct appealing virtues. He writes, what religion often does is give people a language to express their moral views. But people do, as I pointed out, pick and choose. So it can be a useful tool to disseminate morality as well as a justification of immorality. Religion, Bloom writes, provides a language, but the decision of what to say with that language is ours. Now, as many of you know, as a humanist, I have struggled with specifically sacred language, and I still do. However, through my formation as a minister, especially here at Northwest, I've learned to accept that learning another's language and communicating to others in their language is a matter of respect. I can always translate it in my head so it is meaningful to me as well, but using it demonstrates putting the feelings and emotions of others before my own, which is the ultimate service to humanity. It is the centering of the human in humanism. One way to do that. Now, reason and scientific inquiry and individual rights, all of these things, these are all important. And but I find these things are often the focus of humanism today at the expense of what is also written in the latest iteration of the Humanist Manifesto, that life's fulfillment emerges from individual participation in the service of humane ideals, that humans are social by nature and find meaning in relationships, and working to benefit society maximizes individual happiness. These are all in the manifesto, not to mention the aspiration of the greater good of humanity. In fact, there is a significant alignment between these humanist principles and the UU principles. For instance, the aspiration of being in service to humane ideals and that which benefits society is made real by the Unitarian Universalist process of social justice as a spiritual practice. This has also enlightened me about what it really means to be a humanist. As much as separation of church and state, for instance, is an important issue that we humanists have fought for centuries. Framing the criminalization of youth of color, for instance, as I mentioned in a sermon a few months ago, is also a humanist imperative that we must fight for and has been ignored for too long because it's an accepted part of our white supremacy culture. In the words of the humanist Sikivu Hutchinson, humanism can't simply dispense with gods and substitute religion and Western individualism for, I'm sorry, humanism can't simply dispense with gods and substitute reason and Western individualism for religion, period. In order to find the human, the humanity in humanist practice and action, we cannot overlook or ignore vital human issues. I also mentioned in that previous sermon, like interlocking oppression of people of color in education, healthcare, housing, criminal justice, or Black feminist humanism that seeks to center the lives of Black women and women of color in critiques of humanist ethics, morality, and justice. In fact, these issues must be addressed first. The humanist Anthony Pinn writes, to omit attention to modes of social justice like racism is to reduce the connotation of the human in humanism. Furthermore, it is to truncate the challenges confronting human well being in the contemporary world. In other words, it goes against all humanism stands for. Now, all of this is to say that through my formation as a Unitarian Universalist, I've not given up my identity as a humanist. I've just matured into a better understanding of what it means to truly and respectfully uplift all of humanity. I've not given up my atheist convictions either, or my struggle with religious dogma. I've just matured into the understanding that my way of making meaning is based on my character and my experience in the world and is no better and no worse than that of anyone else. I've come to realize in my interactions and experiences with this amazing congregation that, especially as a humanist minister, I must always be respectful of and curious about what is meaningful to others. In fact, I invite all humanist UUs to take advantage of our unique opportunity. Rather than criticize another for their identity or beliefs, undertake our much touted inclination to investigate with an open mind and find out how someone you respect and admire makes meaning in ways other than you. Learn more about human nature by being grateful for and engaging with Unitarian Universalist Christians, Unitarian Universalist Jews, UU Buddhists, and frankly, all other UU and non UU community of communities as they also learn about you to help us all focus on finding the human and fulfill our aspiration of the greater good of humanity. Only with understanding and respect can we be best equipped to truly work toward the humanist aspiration of the ultimate good of all humanity. So I've talked a little about my story and my UU and a lot about my humanist identity. But what about my Jewish identity? Well, I'm still figuring that out. But I can say that Unitarian Universalism offers me, for the first time, the freedom to legitimately curious about my own cultural heritage without feeling as if I have to believe something or I have to pray in a certain way. You might even say that UU has made me more Jew than when I identified as Jewish. We'll see how that goes. In conclusion, the author Thomas King wrote, "The truth about stories is that's all we are." And I hope this sampling of my story has inspired you to think about your own spiritual journey and maybe share it with the congregation at some point. It has been at this wonderful congregation and through the honesty, grace, and love of the people here that I was able to do the work I needed to do on myself in order to be confident that, yes, I am a minister. I will be forever grateful to the community of communities at Northwest for that precious gift. And now we will continue with the next hymn, number, well, let me put my glasses on so I can read it. Number 355, we lift our heart in thanks.
We lift our hearts in thanks today for all the gifts of life, and first for peace that turns away the enemies of strife, and next the beauty of the earth, its flowers and lovely things, the spring's great miracle of birth with sound of songs and wings. Then harvest of its teeming soul in orchard, croft, and field, but more the service and the toil of those who help them yield, and most the gifts of hope and love, of wisdom, truth, and right, the gifts that shine like stars above to chart the world by night.
Our closing words are The Complexity of Motherhood by Reverend Leah Ongiri. On Mother's Day, let us mark how beautiful and complex it can be to mother and to be mothered. To those who have mothered, we thank you. To those who rejoice in the work, the role, the presence of mothering and mothers, we celebrate with you. To those who are in the thick of parenting children of any age, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss through infertility, abortion, miscarriage, adoption, or running away, we mourn with you. To those who have lost their mothers, we grieve with you. To those who have endured abuse at the hands of their mothers, we acknowledge you. To those who experience pain at the marking of this day, we witness you. To those who are single moms, grandmoms, stepmoms, foster moms, adoptive moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. May we reflect with gratitude on the wide spectrum of mothering that happens in our lives and in our communities.